The Israeli airstrikes continue, so too do the rocket attacks from Gaza, and it's all happening just one day before the Israeli elections. So as the search for a truce goes on, can the ruling Kadima party tip the balance in its favour with an 11th hour deal? And could Hamas even lose a strong bargaining chip if they wait too long? This is Inside Story. Hello there, I'm Kamal Santamaria. Could Israel and Hamas just agree to disagree? It is more than 3 weeks, after all, since both sides announced their unilateral ceasefires. That was January 18, which ended the Israeli military operation in Gaza. But as we've seen, it did little to stop the rocket firing across the borders. Now, there was supposed to be some agreement on a long-term solution by the 5th of February. That's obviously come and gone, and no deal. Now time's really becoming critical, with Israel going to the polls on February 10. And adding to the pressure is the news that the right-wing opposition party Likud leads the election polls. That means if the centrist ruling party, that's Kadima, Tzipi Livni's party, wants to sway voters in its favour, well, it might really need that peace deal to show Israelis it can achieve some level of peace for them. Let's bring in our guests at this point. In London is the author on Hamas and a political analyst, Azam Tamimi. And joining us from Cairo is Khalil Al-Anani. He is an expert on political Islam and democratization in the Middle East. He's from the Al-Ahram Foundation. Gentlemen, thanks for joining us on Inside Story. I guess where we should start first of all is the news that Hosni Mubarak, the Egyptian president, is talking about a deal perhaps next week. Khalil Al-Anani, if I come to you first in Cairo, does that surprise you at all that we're still seeing this stretching out? We had February 5th, we've sort of had February 10th as well. We could be looking at another 7 days on top of that?
No, I don't think so. I think that we expected in the last few days that this kind of agreement will be achieved by the upcoming few days. I think that the main obstacle between both parties, between Hamas and Israel, is between the content of the agreement. Hamas is insisting on to get a clear commitment from Israel that Israel will open all crossing points and will lift the blockade. At the same time, Israel is insisting on swapping the borders issue by releasing the captured soldier, Gilad Shalit. So I think the difference is between both parties in the details, but both of them agreed on a lasting truce agreement or accord for 1 year and a half. So the Egyptian rule right now to push both parties to sign this kind of agreement, because now we are witnessing some kind of fragile calm between both parties, and without reaching to this kind of a truce or this kind of accord as soon as possible, I think the situation will go very badly.
Do you feel confident enough, though, that we can talk about this deal in terms of when it is signed, not if it is signed?
Actually, I think it's not about time. I think they will reach to this kind of agreement regardless any other factors, such as the upcoming Israeli elections. It's about what will be next, what will be after this, after signing this accord. Will both parties keep calm and quiet toward this agreement, or we will witness any kind of violation for this agreement? So I don't think it's about time, it's about the guarantees that both parties will not violate this agreement in the future.
Let's go to Azam Tamimi in London for some thoughts from him. You're obviously an expert on Hamas, having written on them. Do you think, or how much do you think Hamas has had, as I've heard suggested, an upper hand at this point? Because we've had this time frame which has been hanging over us as far as the deal goes, and talk that Hamas might have been able to push for some Israeli concessions because they were trying to get the deal over the line nice and quickly.
Well, as far as I am told, Hamas hasn't changed its position. It still wants the siege lifted and the crossings opened, including the Rafah crossing. If that is not agreed to, it is highly unlikely that there will be a formal ceasefire agreement. And I think the obstacle continues in this case, as well as in the case of the Shalit affair, to be the Ramallah Authority. The Ramallah Authority doesn't want any deal that might give more success or more sense of victory to Hamas. And we've heard the Egyptians as well as the Israelis speak both publicly and privately that they don't want to undermine Mahmoud Abbas, and that's why no deal has worked so far.
And do you think it will continue that way? Is that, I mean, you talk about various sticking points, things like the borders, things like Gilad Shalit. How much is Mahmoud Abbas and the PA going to be a sticking point then?
I think it's all in the hands of the Israelis. If the Israelis want to go ahead with the deal, all they need to do is tell Hamas, we accept your conditions. And it's not a big deal, really. They want the siege lifted, and the siege is a declaration of war. There can never be peace while the siege continued. And they need the crossings to be opened, and the Rafah crossing between Egypt and Gaza should be included in this. If that is not agreed, I assure you there will not be a deal.
Let's look at some potential scenarios then, and I'll do this with both of you in turn. I'll start with Khalil Al-Anani in Cairo. Obviously, we've got these elections happening in Israel, and that is going to be a very, very big factor there. It looks like Likud is in the lead. Benjamin Netanyahu could become the next Israeli prime minister. If that were to happen, we're just looking at scenarios here. What do you think would happen? Is there place in the Netanyahu world for talking about truces, or is it all about, as he said in the past, just overthrowing Hamas, getting rid of them?
Unfortunately, our experience with Netanyahu during the 90s was very bad, so I don't expect that Netanyahu will go forward for any peace talking, even with the PA, which leading by Mahmoud Abbas. So I think the situation will be like that. If Netanyahu wants more, and this is actually expected to win, and make some coalition, any kind of coalition with the other right wings in Israel, I think this will be very bad for the peace process in general. But for Gaza specifically, I think the alternative for Netanyahu will be trying to put more pressure on Hamas. We know that, or we witnessed it in the last few days during the campaign, the electoral campaign in Israel, that one of the main purposes of Netanyahu to get rid of Hamas. So I don't think that, I think that Egypt will have to play a vital role in keeping any kind of agreement will be reached in the upcoming few days between both parties. So I'm not optimistic actually by the upcoming Israeli government, and I think the situation will be more difficult and more tough, even for the United States itself. Until now, we couldn't find any signs that Obama administration will push any Israeli government which will be led by the right for any kind of peace agreement. Until now, they are talking about keeping keeping quiet in Gaza and preventing Hamas from any kind of smuggling of weapons. So I don't think that the situation will be very good in the upcoming few months.
Azam Tamimi in London, is there any room for truce talk under a Netanyahu leadership, or do you think we'll see a return to what we saw over January in Gaza and perhaps more?
Well, as far as Hamas is concerned and as far as the siege on Gaza is concerned, Netanyahu, Olmert, Livni or Barak, it won't make a difference. And that's why the Israeli election is not really a concern for Hamas. They don't think much about it as much as do the people involved in peace negotiations with Israel, or do the Americans. To the Americans, it may make a difference.
But are they not?
However, I personally think...
Sorry to interrupt you. Are there not varying levels amongst those major Israeli candidates? Netanyahu seems to have very much been the most outspoken about Hamas and about Gaza.
Well, in terms of rhetoric, but in terms of reality on the ground, the Labour Party and Kadima, you always hear from them sweet words, but you see bitter action. They are the ones who waged the war on Gaza and destroyed it. And I think it's the Zionist project. It's the same project. It's the same ideology. These people simply appeal to different sectors of their own electorate. As far as the Arabs are concerned, as far as the Palestinian issue is concerned, they all eventually agree on the major issues.
Okay, we're going to grab a quick break here on Inside Story. When we come back, a closer look at the possible scenarios for Gaza, and especially in light of these Israeli elections. We're back in a moment.